Hello everyone. In this video we will look at what is the type conversion in Python. Okay, so type conversion is, as the name suggests, is converting one data type into the other. So for example, if we want to convert a variable which is of integer data type into float, that would be the type conversion. All right. So the next thing that we would want to understand is why do we need type conversion in the first place? So to understand this, let's say you have a variable called a, which is an integer having a value of, let's say, 5. So, so in the code you simply write a is equal to 5. And while typing out your code, let's say you want the value of a to be a float of 5.0 instead of the integer 5. So now what you can do is either you can redefine this particular variable called a. So you will reassign the value of a as 5.0 and you would get this particular variable into a float type. Or the other option that you have is you can use the type conversion that we have with Python. So here we have two types of type conversion that is available to us. One is known as the implicit type conversion and the other is known as the explicit type conversion. So when we talk about the implicit type conversion, it only means that implicit. So it is internal. So whatever conversion happens, Python takes care, Python automatically converts it for you. So as a user, you do not have to give an extra command for the type conversion for implicit type conversions. Coming to the explicit type conversion, it's the exact opposite of the implicit type conversion. That is, here the user has to specifically give instructions to Python about what kind of conversion the user is looking for. So, for an example, in explicit conversion, let's say I have a variable a which is having a value of 5. Now I want the variable a to be of string format. Then I cannot do this implicitly. I have to go for the explicit type conversion. Okay, so let's understand the implicit and the explicit type conversions in a better manner by looking at it in the Python notebook. So I'm going to switch over to my Python notebook. So here we are in the Jupyter notebook. So let's say I want to declare two variables. So the variables I'm choosing here is, let's say a is equal to 10 and let's say b is equal to 11.5. So as we can, looking at this variable itself, we can understand what could be the type of this particular variables. So type of a is nothing but an integer. So that is the reason we have int. Similarly, type of b would be a float because we have a decimal number in this particular variable. Okay, let's say we have a new variable called c and this variable is a combination of a and b. So c is equal to a plus b. So if we run this, Python has run this particular code, and after this is executed, if we check for the type of c, now we see something very interesting happening. Type of c is directly given as float, but we have added an integer and a float value in the process of creating this variable c. So what exactly has happened? So internally what Python has done is we wanted to add 10 and 11.5. Here Python has implicitly converted the integer 10 to 10.0, that is a float number. And already we have this variable b which is having a value of 11.5. So here when you add 10.0 and 11.5, you get a value of 21.5. To cross check that, if you run C, you get the exact value of 21.5. So here Python has implicitly converted integer into float. Okay. Now let's try something different. Let's try and add a number to a string. For that, let's create a string. So I'm creating a new variable called d, and this variable d has a string of abc. Now let's add a with d. So I'm simply saying a plus d, and I'm going to execute this particular line. We get a type error. So this line has not been executed. Python has thrown us a type error. And if we read through the type error, it says unsupported operand type for addition, integer and string. That is, Python is telling us that it cannot add an integer to a string, and that is the reason it is an error. What if I wanted something like ABC 10 as an output? To get this kind of output, I already have ABC in this variable called d. ABC is a string. Whereas if you look at 10, 10 is a number and is stored as an integer value in this variable called a. And like we saw previously, when we are adding these two, integer and string, we get an error. So now we have to explicitly change this particular type. Only then can we get that particular desired value of ABC 10. To do that, the first thing we need to do is we have the variable d which is storing the string abc, and we need to add this variable string of 10, but we have the value as integer. So to explicitly say str of a. If we run this, now we get our value of abc 10. So what exactly has happened is str of a, if I just copy this particular piece of code and execute it separately, as soon as we type in str of a, what Python has done is we have explicitly asked Python to convert the data type from integer to string. So str of a is actually giving us a value of string of 10. And if you look at line 12, here d was already a string having a value of abc. To that we have added another string of value 10. That is the reason we are getting an output of abc 10. Okay. Now, let's say we have another variable called e, and this time Let's keep a set of numbers. So let's say 1, 2, 3 is stored as a string in this variable called e. And now what I actually want to do is I want to add the number 10 along with 123, but using the current variables that we have. To do that, we already know that the value 10 is stored in this variable called a. So a has a integer having a value of 10. But 123 is stored in the variable e but as a string. So we need to convert it. So I can say a plus. So this time we need an integer. So int is going to convert this into integer. So int of e will actually give me the desired output of 10 plus 123. So this is how we have actually converted explicitly a string variable that is equal to string of 123 to integer of 123 that has been added to another integer. So you have to always remember this one rule that when you're trying to add or do any kind of other operations, you need to do it thing, with variables that are compatible. So in our case, when we were doing a plus b, both a and b were compatible. One was an integer, other was a float. So we could easily convert an integer to float. That's the reason this was possible. But if we tried doing the same thing with two variables which are not compatible, so an integer along with a string. So string was C. String was D. Okay, so A plus D when we do, we were getting a type error. So you have to be careful as to what kind of variables you are taking for this particular operations, and whenever you take such variables, do keep in mind that we have an option of explicitly changing the data type, and by doing that we can easily get the desired output. Okay, so this is what I had for you in this video. Thank you.